so when we think about also people, whoever has a better brain and who can come up with a better decision will
Mm.
likely make more money
Yeah,
without
sure,
spending much energy and
sure.
time. And I can see many young billionaires coming out every year.
Mm.
um, so this year I've seen several billionaires still in their 20s, but
Mm.
they made billions. Then you think you have to think about, like, how did they do that? Like, did
Sure,
they really put like 15 hours a day working? I
mm.
don't think so.
Right,
I don't think it was because of their the number of hours of work.
sure.
But then when we look at some like a boomer generation near retirement, near at their retirement, but they still struggle, and they have probably worked hard in their whole life, but then they still struggle financially and they don't have much.
Yes,
So I don't want to be that case.
sure, sure, sure.
I want to be young and wealthy,
Mhm.
and I want to work on what I want to work on. I want to work with people that I think I'm working together, enjoying with.
Yes,
So, but then a lot of people work with people who they don't enjoy working with, and then they maybe the only reason that they have to work there is to just earn money.
sure. I mean,
So yeah,
you really conveyed some really heart-wrenching topics there, because what you said, I think a lot of people can identify with that. And when you talk about when you think about the common office setting where you just have such an abundance of people in one space, I just think that's a toxic environment. I think to have
mhm,
so many people in one space and you have so many that are opting for certain positions and they will do anything to succeed in climbing the ladder to those positions. So it really becomes cutthroat when you have a lot of people opting for the same goal. In life, a lot of people are opting for the same goal, but in that kind of a setting, it I think that it becomes irrational and it really becomes uh like a really inappropriate environment. And when you talk about people working hard and they're earning money and they're not enjoying, well, when you say working hard in that kind of an ambience, they're being directed to work a certain way. I think that most people will work hard under appropriate circumstances. I think a lot of people could work hard if they're inspired a certain way. Like everyone's inspired to go home at the end of the day.
yeah.
So if they're inspired to go home and run to their car and get it, they could be inspired to do anything. So I just think
Mhm.
that it's kind of a game of inspiration.
Yeah, I always believe that it's the choice that
Mhm.
people make. They
Right.
have choice to get out of that office and do
Yes.
something
Mm.
that may uh, uh, make more profit, basically. But they have to have an idea. They have to do the proper research. Then
Sure.
they will, and then they take action based on that,
Mhm.
and they will make a lot more profit than where they are working currently. And that's something that a lot of people don't do it. And the one reason is the companies don't want to lose their employees. So
Sure.
the companies
Yes.
always encourage their employees to stay where they
Sure.
are.
Yes.
That's also what
Yes.
I did to my employees. And
Yeah.
I actually don't know if that's a really good thing for all these
Mhm,
employees.
mhm.
But that's as a leader of a company. I mean, all the leaders are the same. Like they have to do that, like for their company.
Mhm.
Uh, but as an individual, we can always find better way. Uh,
Sure.
we sometimes need time to think about our future, near future
Yes.
at least,
Mhm. Right.
because I am 35 and you are 37,
I'm yeah, Canadian age. I'm Korean age. I'm 38. So Canadian age. I'm
30.
36.
Yeah,
Yes.
Canadian age, I'm 35.
35. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when we think about 12 years ago when we met in
Mhm,
Ansan, it
mhm.
it it feels like it was yesterday. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's I felt like that when we started talking
Yeah.
immediately. I feel like even though that there has been exponential changes in our lives since that time, but it was sometimes those things feel like yesterday. But there's also when you go through the chronological order, there's
Hmm.
some things seem like a long time ago. Like when I was living with Dine, that seems like ages ago. But then even before that, when I was hanging out with you and Unsan, I mean, sometimes that does feel like yesterday. Like when I was working at that school with John,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
and the Canadian owner, that
Yeah.
that was a flash. It went instantaneously.
Yeah.
So,
So it's been
but
12 years.
it's
Uh
been, yeah, it's been approximately 12, yeah, 11, 12,
yeah.
12, yeah, 12 years. Yeah, 12 years.
So
Yes.
so
11, 12 years.
right. I believe that time flies at a faster speed every year passing by. So I believe that sooner, very soon, I will probably reach 50. So when you think about age 50,
Mhm.
what, what do you think?
Well, first of
Uh,
all, when you talk about time
yeah,
and you say that it moves faster as you get older, that
yeah,
is
right.
very captivating because
Yeah. I even
it definitely
calculated
feels that way.
mathematically making sense. So, like, I can give you one example. Between
Mhm,
10 to 20,
mhm,
it's probably the longest time in our lifetime.
mhm.
And then between 20 to 30, probably it's about the same as uh, between 13 to 20. And then between 30 to 40 will be about the same as uh, between 20 and 27 from
Right, right.
so it gets faster like so I
So you're
feel
talking
like
about relative to the number of years. So is
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of relative to, like, if someone is 120 kilograms and
yeah,
then they cut to 110, that's
yeah,
a lot different than someone that's
yeah.
70 kilograms and cuts to 60, because the person that's smaller, that's more of a percentage of their whole body weight.
I think it's because of our brain. Our brain gets
Okay.
older, so we
Yes.
cannot process much details, and so the time. So we feel like a time goes faster, and
Because
then
but is that because we can't process the details, or because there's more to process?
I believe the our brain always tries to simplify, and
Simplify.
yes, so we have already experienced so many things in our lifetime already, so that
Mhm.
the rest of the life won't be that different. So
Right.
there's not much new experience coming to us. Uh, so we won't really feel like we basically feel like we are going through the same thing over and over, which diminish the time. I like it shrink the passage of time.
No,
So
that's yes.
it's been 12 years. So
Hmm.
when you reach 50, or when I reach 50,
Hmm.
that 12 years ago we met, and we become 50, it will be almost like a, to you it will be 52, to me it will be 50. And like about the time, like between 7 and 8 years of that 12 years that we experience, when we I mean when we experience like about, I have to say 8 and 9 years. That's just about the time that we will reach 50.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not the 12 years. It will be even shorter than 12 years,
Shorter.
even if
Right.
we still have, I have 15 years left to
Right.
reach 50. You have 13.
Right.
But that 13 years, maybe you're based on your feeling, it may be like between 7 to 8 years, or eight to
Right.
nine years.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
that's I've
that
thought
how
about that
fast
before.
you will
Yeah.
become 50.
Right. It's kind of then it is it has parallelism with the weight
Yeah.
hypothesis, where the smaller you are, the more 10 kilograms matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're
Right. Right.
30 kilograms and you lose 10 kilograms, it matters even more the less you are.
Yeah.
So it's kind, but then the other side of that consensus is that time is, according to quantum mechanics, it's a separate entity from the way
Hmm.
we process it. So that's the way we process it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of like when we look at the
But
ocean, we
that's
see
what
blue.
matters, right?
Well, that's what matters to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
matters
To
to us.
us. Yeah.
But to really deduce time and to figure
Hmm.
out why it has that sort of an influence on us, um, it, it it's very obviously nobody can properly deduce this, but that's
Hmm.
the way it seems to us. But then time is it's a very interesting thing, because,
Hmm.
and it never made sense to me. I always felt, and this is even more applicable to what you're saying, I always felt that time was a human construct. I don't see it as an entity. Like gravity is an entity, and I always understood gravity because it, it it's an
It's
actual
there.
entity. But I always thought of time
Yeah.
as space
Yeah.
and decay,
Yeah. Yeah.
like space and decay. Like we don't get older because of time. We get older because our bodies deteriorate,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Right.
So then aside from that, I kind of seen time as something that humans constructed as an instrument to measure space and decay.
Hmm.
Maybe. But then sometimes I think that, well, when you think about us hanging out in Unsan, or when you think
Hmm.
about the Korean World Cup in 2002,
Hmm.
it's hard to not call that an entity, because that's a moment in our mind.
Yeah.
So that's where
So
my
okay.
theory
Well,
goes in the
well.
garbage.
Okay. So I always fear that I'm reaching 40 and 50,
Me too. Me
and
too.
especially 50. I feel scared
Yeah, me too.
becoming
Yeah.
50, honestly.
Yes.
And I don't know that whether I will be as productive as today. I
Sure.
will probably not as productive as today. You don't really
Mhm.
see many 50 years old people in your industry, right? I also don't see many 50 years old guys in this IT industry. So I really feel like I don't have much time to build something that I want. So the time is too short, and to me, time is becoming the most valuable
Sure.
commodity to
Sure.
me. To others,
Yes.
I don't know, but to me at least.
Yes.
Um, and so time is not waiting for me, and
Mhm.
I really
Waits
feel
for
like
nobody.
yeah. So I feel like I really need to do something that I think that it matters to me and to the society. Otherwise, you know, time will just pass and I will get older.
Well,
It's
but you
scary.
can revert that opinion back to health and just overall wellness. So the more you dedicate your precious quote unquote time, the
Hmm.
more you dedicate that an hour a day to exercise and really being a disciplinarian in
Hmm.
terms of your eating, having all those things regimented, that is going to prolong your time. So
Yeah,
if you do
I get
these
that point,
things
but let me tell you this
right,
example.
mhm,
So an accident can happen to us. It can deteriorate a
at
certain
any
part
time,
of our body. We
yes,
can develop cancer. It shouldn't happen, but it can happen.
it can be hereditary.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, and when I exercise in the Philippines, I went to the gym every day,
Oh,
and
good.
then yeah, and then I was doing really well, and then I started losing a lot of fat. I felt really good, um, but at one point, I did deadlift, and I carried just about the same amount of what I did. I lifted, but that day it was weird that I had some kind of pain in my
Mhm.
back,
In your back,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I came back home. I kept having that pain for for 2 weeks, and I couldn't work out anymore because whenever I carry anything a little bit heavy, it just hurts my back. And even today, when I carry anything over 20 kilograms, it hurts my back.
Yes,
And then I even did scanning MRI, and there's nothing really I can see it wrong, but it hurts. I don't know how it happened. So these kind of small things can happen, and you know, we don't know what's going to happen to our
right.
body. So
Deadlifts are, there's no double-edged sword like deadlifts. I stopped deadlifting about 10 years ago,
yeah,
because
I
you're,
don't think anybody should recommend this.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's strange because in terms, I think that it's one of the most beneficial exercises,
yeah, right,
because when you deadlift, you have the most amazing pump in your back
right,
for
right,
like
right.
3 days,
Yeah, right.
and you just feel like Superman
Yeah,
because it hits every muscle fiber in your
yeah,
back, shoulders,
yeah.
and it even hits your legs a
Hmm.
little bit as well. But your lower back is so apt to
Hmm.
damage because
Yeah,
it's such a awkward position to go
right.
down and lift the bar. So
Yeah,
so I don't recommend anybody to deadlift. It's just, it's too
risky.
too risky, too risky.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. So
So that's kind of unfortunate that
mm,
happened to me,
right.
but like that kind of
It
thing
happened to me
can
too.
happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hurt my back from deadlifts. I was obsessed with deadlifts and squats and the
Hmm.
heavy. I mean, you remember that old me.
Yeah.
That's what, that was me. That I was deadlifting and heavy bench press, never cardio, never eating vegetables, just everything is bulk and power, just disgusting. So yeah, it's I'm a real believer in having mobility and having full utilization of your body, and you're able to implement that through running, yoga, stretching, doing such a variety of exercises, doing high repetition,
Right.
and having the right posture on every
Right.
movement. So but that goes back to what you were originally talking about when you were saying that we were talking about health, and then you said that anything can happen at any
Yeah.
given time.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
so
That's something we cannot expect.
we
Like,
can't expect, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we can be cautious and we can
Mm-hmm.
be strategic,
Mm-hmm.
but there's some things that are seem to be unavoidable. Some things, but
To me, it wasn't only health but also wealth. That
sure.
there was time that I gained so much profit, and it went so down. So after experiencing these crazy jump and then fall, uh, like I started. I mean, I'm now learning something new that like because as time passes by, like I'm trying to take less risk, and I'm trying to do more research to reduce
Mhm.
the risk. Before I was thinking more risk, a higher risk, higher return. But
Yes.
now, after I experienced that such fall, plunge, and now I'm more into uh, uh, in a good enough profit,
Mhm.
um, good enough return, and then if, if possible, I want to reduce the risk as low as possible. And then even exercise, even and health, like I don't want to take big risk. I
Right.
don't want to carry too much weight.
Right.
Just good enough is good enough. I don't want to
Yes.
go over the limit. So
Mhm.
this is kind of behavior that I can see from older people. That
Okay.
actually means we are getting older.
Sure. Sure. No. No. I definitely can esteem that
I
statement
can say
because
it's wisdom. At the same
yes.
time, we are getting older as well.
Well, it's wisdom and in conjunction with trial and error,
Mhm,
because we went through a lot of trials and errors, and eventually you're supposed to be able to sidestep these
mhm,
problems. If you see
mhm,
something that can cause harm,
mhm,
then you're supposed to sidestep.
mhm.
And we're also supposed to become more considerate of others. That's supposed to be another predilection that people obtain when they get older. Not everybody, but that's something else that will absolutely help with business endeavors. If you are somebody that someone knows is genuine, then
Mhm,
they're more willing to invest in you, whether that's emotionally or financially
mhm,
or anything. So
mhm.
there's as we get older, we are supposed to get better at everything. That's
Yeah.
and
Uh,
be calculated risk takers.
right, right. Yeah, sounds
Yes.
great. Going back to the topic of suicide, I have a
Mhm.
question for you.
Mhm.
Do you know what age group in Korea commit the most suicide?
So I read about that, and there seemed to be oscillations in that number from 2005 to 2010. And I know that the old people, the
Yeah,
older Korean
yeah,
generation,
yeah.
are.
Right.
It seems like it's a toss up
Yeah.
between the elderly and the teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like people in their 30s and 40s and 50s
Mm-hmm.
are less,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
the teenagers and elderly are
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
assuming that position.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And that would
What do you think?
make.
Why they
Well,
do
i
that?
think i
The
think
older
that some of
people.
those reasons, well, I think that we can split hairs and talk about all these social norms
Mm-hmm.
that just wreak havoc on society, which Korea is there's a great magnitude. But I think a
What do you
lot of
think?
that abbreviates to neglect. Neglect when if you're an older person in
Mm-hmm.
Korea
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like you are not contributing to your family or society, you're not receiving a worker's pension when you worked hard your whole life. And some people, like your father, who is in the construction industry, which is a very difficult industry,
Right.
and they can work hard their whole life and they don't receive compensation upon retiring.
Mhm.
And when you work hard your whole life and you're a person that was a pillar in sophisticating Korean society, you have to be taken care of when you retire. And in
Mhm.
Korea, those people are neglected. And then
So it's
you
about money.
it's
That's what
well
we can
it's
say.
about no, well it's about I'm more referring to neglect. And
Mhm.
when you look at teenagers, like because this also affiliates to what we talked about, the high middle class who do have money. So the teenagers who are committing suicide in Korea, they don't have a money issue. They live in a beautiful condominium.
Mhm.
Koreans just call them house or apartment.
Yeah, right.
But they have their card that they can
Mhm.
buy what they want with, and they all they're all dressed so well. They're healthy. They eat healthy. They have pretty skin,
Mhm.
and they have all these attributes, but you have this high suicide rate. So obviously it's not financial with them. So
Yeah,
I would say
yeah.
that also is consistent with neglect.
Mhm.
They feel neglected because they can't succeed with whatever expectation the parents have on them, their peers, their school. So I think that there's something conducive with the elderly and the teenagers, even though their situations are differ in some ways. I think that it all abbreviates to neglect. I think.
Yeah, for the teenagers, you probably know better than I know because you deal with teenage students, Korean students. For the older people, it's more about money issue, just a simple money
Sure.
issue. They just don't
Sure.
have enough money,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they can't work and they can't
Yes.
find a job. And you probably seen some old people having this push card and then
Yes.
collecting papers, the
Yes.
boxes. That's because that's the only thing they can do,
Wow.
and they
Yeah, I
they
see them.
haven't.
I see them.
Yeah, and they haven't had a retirement plan. They haven't
Yes.
had this. So so when I see those people, um, like I mean, that generation has never been educated
Mhm.
financially, and that
Right.
they just didn't understand how important the finance is, and they probably got educated more about hard working.
Yes. Sure. Sure.
I'm sure they've gone through all this hard work, but they
Yes.
brought nothing because
Well,
they never got
and that's
hard.
sometimes that's why they're physically able. You see these I see a lot
Yeah,
of
but is
men
that
and
good
women.
thing at that age working like
No, I
that?
mean no, no, I
I
mean
wish no one does did that.
sure, sure, me
Yeah,
too, me too. It's I don't know what um where it becomes complicated is I it's important to know a person's state of mind because
hmm
some people want to be active. I know many
yeah, but
people in
active,
Canada.
not like that.
There's different,
Active,
sure, not like that
yeah.
kind of active, but there's a lot of old retired people in Canada that get part-time jobs because they feel like they are just wasting away in their
hmm
retirement, and they feel sedentary and they start to gain weight, so they do that to remain active. Now what you see in Korea, it looks very disturbing to
hmm
see
Right.
older
Some
people
of those
picking up
old people.
bottles, and
Yeah.
it's a very disturbing sight.
Right.
So I
Right.
think that's if I was seeing, and this is when you really have to take a long look
Yeah.
at governments and political officials and say, just what are you doing? How are you distributing these
Yeah,
finances? Because
I
no
don't want to.
country should have that.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but I don't really blame them
Mhm.
because it's our our own obligation as well, that we have to think about our finance, and we
Sure.
have to. That's why, because we cannot work forever. I
Yes.
believe we have to always have some money
Hmm.
investing in either real estate or like a stocks. We have to do some research. Everyone should do that. Everyone should do investing,
Right.
because we just can't work forever, and somebody
Right.
has to work. Investing in
Yes.
company means somebody in that company will be working
Hmm.
to for the company, and when the
Hmm.
company makes more profit, the stock price goes up.
Yes.
So we need to invest. We need to be educated.
Mhm.
I mean, the one thing that school should educate everyone is finance.
Yes.
Finance is more important than anything.
Sure. Sure.
But then the school never does that.
They
And
don't. Yeah, they don't. There's something in the traditional education systems. There's something that's very opposed to focusing on finance because I didn't even hear about any segment of curriculum in my schools that was consistent with finance. It was just non-existent in our school system. So there's definitely something in the culture of schooling that is opposed to studying that, and maybe it's because they are in the environs of what you talked about when you were talking about the lefties and you were talking about how they're conservative and how this is their agenda and they don't want to have these big corporations, and perhaps that's also in the environ of school systems where they are
do you,
sharing that
yeah,
belief.
do you think that school is there to more likely take care of children when the parents are working, or there to educate the students?
Yes, I really now I have this I'm very blessed to have such empirical knowledge on school and children, and I'm very lucky to see real development and see I watch a lot of growth. Now, growth is going to happen with kids. It's just going to happen incessantly because they're growing and there's all their brains are picking up all this information. So sometimes it's good information, sometimes it's bad information, but they're picking up information because they're in that growing phase. But what I see and what I do in my classrooms is they're totally at liberty, these children. So sometimes I'm their pinata. You know, pinata, where
I don't know.
you the Mexican candy where they hit it with the baseball bat and the candy falls out. It's like a Mexican tradition. So I'm kind of their pinata that they hit with baseball bats sometimes, but they're totally at liberty. And I really despise when bosses or seniors or anybody that's in a position of power when they obsess about control. And so this is why I give this liberty. And I see a really unique growth in children and teenagers,
Okay,
putting them at liberty.
I get it. Okay. So my question is, it's more like, uh, is school there to keep the children safe? Meanwhile, parents working outside, because there's nobody at home. So,
Yes,
um, is it kind of like a daycare center,
I would
or
say that originally that's why it was established. I would say
that,
that if you
so
really
that
go back,
there's the point. Yeah, I
okay.
also totally agree with that. So during the beginning of the industrial revolution,
Mhm.
and parents needed these children to be somewhere, and probably government came up with an idea of training these children to become next factory worker or office
Okay.
worker.
Okay. Okay.
That
Yes.
was probably the original idea why these school became normal for every children.
Yes.
Um, and today, when we think about it, when it comes to education, there's so much to learn when you actually do it by yourself. And when
Right.
you watch YouTube and then do it by yourself, you can actually learn anything. There's so
Yes.
many things to learn, and financially much more helpful.
Mhm.
But then we still feed like a junk information that we
Yes.
probably never need,
Yes.
um, such as mathematics and history lesson. I mean, some people will need high level of mathematics, high level of knowledge of history, but most people don't need it.
Right.
But then everybody has to go through it, and then
Right.
I
Right.
believe it's big waste of society.
Right. So I think that's a very good point and very good comparison that you made with the Industrial Revolution and how they originated those institutions as almost like daycares and
Mhm.
preparing them to be those
Next
workers.
worker, yeah,
And you are adumbrating that that trend just went
hmm,
through every generation, and that
right,
trend
right,
is existential
yeah,
in 2021.
yeah.
So
We now
I
have
think that,
different revolution,
yes, now we have
information
a different,
revolution.
sure,
Yeah,
and which is completely contrary to
yeah,
what they're teaching in
yeah,
school. I mean,
exactly,
what they're teaching them in
exactly.
school is not
Not for this society.
designing them for this. Exactly, exactly. So these are things, you know, it's funny how you can have such a casual conversation such as we're having here, and these are some I mean, you don't hear someone say, you hear people talk about how they feel like their schooling doesn't apply in their life, that there's not a proper translation. But then the way that you put it in perspective is a lot more informative. If someone doesn't agree with something, they should categorize their reasoning, and that's something you did. But that industrial revolution comparison is that's illuminative. It's very much illuminative. So so what would you, off the top of your head,
Hmm.
what would you suggest as a substitute
Hmm.
for that system? Would you still suggest school, but to completely rearrange these
I believe
the
we don't need
subjects,
school.
or
We don't
you
need
believe we
school.
don't need school?
We
Okay,
have to
okay.
free all the children.
Wow, free the
Yeah,
children.
yeah.
Wow, wow.
I believe the school is like prison.
Like prison.
Yeah.
Wow. My
Why did?
son said that those exact words.
Oh,
He said it's
exactly.
like, yeah, he said
Oh
it.
my
His
god.
exact words were, "I don't want to go to prison today."
Yeah. Oh wow. So
Yeah.
yeah, I said similar things when I was
Mm.
younger, and I
Right.
really
Right.
felt it was like a prison. And you
Mhm.
don't actually see much difference between prison
Right.
and school. The only thing is that the students can somehow have freedom after
Yes.
prison time
There.
every
Yeah. There's
day.
like, exactly. There's like kind of like a period, an exemption period where
Yeah.
they can
What?
watch TV and.
Yeah. What's the point of having prison when you
Mhm.
think about it? The reason behind the prison is to taking freedom away from these people,
Sure.
right? Who have
Sure.
done something bad,
Sure.
and that's our sentence. That's our punishment. But we
Yes.
punish young children
Mhm.
and by taking their freedom away.
Right.
And I believe we have to give the freedom back to the children, to the
Yes.
society.
Yes.
And government should no longer require these children to be there, to be in
Sure.
prison.
No, I mean, I think that you're really making uh, kind of an opinion that you can talk at length about, and I think it's a very interesting opinion. Um, what would you say if you were in a circumstance where children were all of a sudden given this freedom to
Mm-hmm.
use it at their will?
Mm-hmm.
Would you have any concern that we would see problems with structure and problems with their cognitive development, perhaps their physical development, or do you think that they would
There will
automatically
be more
find growth,
diversity
more
when it comes
diversity?
to all the things that you mentioned.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, some kids will probably grow much taller or bigger.
okay,
Some children will find more interest in working with others
yes,
rather than being with other children,
mhm,
other the same age group.
mhm,
Um, and there will be more mixture of different age group
mhm.
naturally, and that they would do something based on their interests.
Based
So
on their interests. Okay,
I, I think there are some reasons that I say school is prison, because one reason is taking their freedom away. The other one
yes,
is you have to be with people that you don't like to be with.
that one
That
is
yeah,
really powerful. That's very
yeah,
powerful because um, you have to wonder how much trauma people harbor
yeah,
inside of their
yeah,
their their whole life
yeah,
structure based
yeah,
off of the experiences of school. The
yeah, right,
trauma that people go through in school is
hmm,
very underrated.
right, yeah,
It's
yeah,
underrated.
right, right,
And growing up in the 90s, as you
yeah,
did too, the
yeah,
90s was psycho.
right, right,
And you
yeah,
were bred in the 90s. And
yeah,
at
right.
that time, and you and I, you were in Korea and I was in Canada. So
It was brutal.
we come from different shades, but it would have been brutal in many respects,
Yeah,
in our own respects. Um, and yeah, just brutal. And we just, in many ways, we didn't have a receptacle to go
hmm,
to if we had issues, and nobody, there wasn't
yeah.
anyone
And
to
teachers
listen.
didn't
And I
care
know
much.
I
Uh,
read about Korea from that time, and
yeah,
Korea in the 90s, that
hmm,
was the wild, wild west.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. It was the Wild West.
that was a place of just
and I'm
sorrowful
sure
and
your classroom probably had some girls,
mhm,
female students.
mhm.
Our classroom, we divided even school for male student and female students. Or
Sure.
if the
No, they
school wasn't divided, they
yes.
usually separate between the two groups. So I never had female classmates in my classroom.
Okay.
Everybody was
Never.
guys.
Okay.
So
Okay.
imagine all
Okay.
these like guys, uh, um, a stressed environment all together.
Right. Right. Right.
You know, like
Yes. That sounds like that's what Canada was like in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. They
yeah,
separated
yeah,
all the schools. Now, when I was in school, they were all integrated, but they did have all girls schools if that's what girls wanted. Some girls wanted to have the all
oh,
girls school, and they could choose that if that was their will. But most of them were integrated between the two genders. And but you're saying that having the one gender,
hmm.
that you're saying that perpetuated the stress because it was all boys.
So I believe that when in a small space you put
Mhm,
the same species
mhm.
at same growth rate, every these animals have the same growth rate and the same species in a small room. It actually literally means telling them to compete.
To compete. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.